Welcome to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken. Shep will talk with some of the smartest thinkers in business to help make you more successful in your professional and personal life. This is Amazing Business Radio with Shep Hyken.
Hello, everybody. Shep Hyken here. We're back with another episode of Amazing Business Radio. I have a great guest today. He is the author of a book, Your Table is Ready, Tales of a New York City Maître D by Michael Cecchi-Azzolina. Now, Michael owns a restaurant, Cecchi's, great restaurant, and today we're going to be talking about the hospitality mentality. By the way, I love the book, Your Table is Ready, but I'm going to warn you, if you buy the book, not a spoiler alert, but you need to know there is some language in the book. I would say it's kind of an R-rated book for language, not anything else, but it's a fun read. It's his story. It's about how he got in the restaurant business, his philosophies on the restaurant business and life in general. And if you are into getting that hospitality mentality, you will enjoy the book. All right. Before we get into the interview with Michael, a couple of quick announcements. If you've got an amazing story that you want to share with me, or number two, if you've got an amazing question that you want answered, I am happy to do that. All you need to do is reach out to me on any of the social channels. I'm pretty much everywhere. If it is a question, please use the hashtag #AskShep, and I will answer the question right there, maybe on this show, or I will answer it in my newsletter, The Shepherd Letter, which comes out every week, and you can subscribe at no charge. Just go to www.hyken.com, and you can sign up right there. You'll also get my research, which is my annual research report. We publish it annually, no extra charge. Happy to provide that for you. And hopefully, between the tips and the newsletter and the information and the research report, you'll be on your way to creating a better and even amazing experience for your customers, your guests, your patients, your clients, whatever you want to call them. All right, let's get into our interview. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shep. Nice to be here.
And it is so nice to meet you. You're in New York City. I love the city. I love the restaurants. And we're going to be talking about restaurants, your background, and all about the hospitality mentality.
Sounds good, sir.
Is that a word or a phrase that you'd heard of before?
Hospitality mentality?
Yes.
Hospitality mentality. Yeah. I think, it more so now for some reason. Hospitality is at the forefront of many people's it's at the forefront in people's minds, and I'm not sure why, but so many times customers will thank me and say, thank you for your hospitality. And this is new. This is not something that I've heard. I'm doing this almost 40 years. I've only been hearing this, say, the past year and a half or so. So there's been a change. I think there's been books written on it, hospitality, and people are much more aware of it. And so it's at the forefront of people's in the forefront of people's minds, excuse me. But yes, I have heard the phrase, and I think it's much more prevalent than it was before.
So instead of saying thank you for the great service experience, they're saying thank you for the hospitality.
Thank you for your hospitality.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is relatively new.
This is wonderful.
Will Guidara, Danny
Yep.
Meyer, they've all written books on hospitality. I think Danny started the whole trend, and
Yep.
I think that's why. I definitely think that's why.
We'll talk about Danny in just a moment because there's some personal background I'd love to share. I don't know if I've ever shared it on this show before, but I want to talk about your background, but to the whole point of how important the hospitality mentality is. And I've mentioned this on the show before. I interviewed a gentleman named Jim Bush, who is the Senior VP Worldwide of Customer Experience for American Express. And he said, if I had a choice of hiring somebody for my contact center for customer support and taking care of our members, by the way, highly recognized as one of the top companies in delivering a great experience. He said, if I had a choice of somebody that had 10 years of experience in a contact center who really knew how to work the screens and answer the phone and do what they do, or hire somebody that worked at a restaurant, I'm hiring somebody that worked at the restaurant because they get how to take care of people.
100%, 100%. And also, when I hire, the last position we needed was for a server. I got 560 resumes. Half of them were unqualified. Their job was not even in the restaurant business. But there are quite a few with many, many years of experience. And I'll look at those resumes, and I'll look at kids just into New York, maybe worked some restaurants out of town, and I'll call them in, and I find that the ones with the least experience but have been in hospitality are probably the best suited for what we do. They're not bringing any baggage in with them. They're eager to understand and learn about the business, and they like what they do, at least at a very young age. The old timers tend to get a little bit rough around the edges. So I agree with them 100%. And if you could work in a restaurant, you could damn well work anywhere.
Yeah, it really is so important to understand how to develop that people skill. I always talk about there is a technical side of service, which actually ties more into experience, and then there is the what I would call soft side of service, which is that hospitality mentality and how we serve people, people to people. We can teach a server who doesn't have a lot of experience to pick up the plate on certain side, the right side, the left side, and drop it off. And really the technical aspect of running the experience. Anybody can learn that, but that people to people skill is very, very important.
Yeah, I don't hire people because of their resume per se. Look, if you've waited tables, you can go to the table, write down an order, go to the POS system, punch that order in, and as you say, put down the silver, serve the plate properly. But it takes a really special person to understand what real hospitality is and how to communicate from one person to another. It's really person to person, or person to 5 or 6 or 12 people, and it comes from the heart. And if they've got that heart in them and they actually love people, and you can tell by the conversations you have with them, those are the people that I want to hire 100% of the time. Look, we don't sell food, we sell an experience. And the experience begins when our front door opens. And whether it's conscious or unconscious, someone has to walk through our transom and feel somewhat transformed. We have 2 doors. Go into the second door, and suddenly, if the lights are perfect and the music is right, and you're getting this wonderful smile from the person at the door, and the bar, which is right by the front door, the bartender, if they're not crazy busy, acknowledges you, well, you're winning. You're
Yeah.
doing really what needs to be done. They've got to forget they've left the New York City subway bad ride, or they had a lousy cab driver, or their boss yelled at them. But when they walk through that door, their shoulders should drop a little bit, and they could be, oh, and they tend to forget about what happened, and now you've got them. And now you can bring them into your experience.
And you want to know what's amazing about what you just said? How hard is that to do? It's really it's not hard to tell somebody to do it because they completely understand it. Getting them to do it consistently, in spite of all the distractions they might have, regardless of the kind of day they might have, regardless of what might be happening in the back, in the kitchen, anything is happening, to put that front on and simply acknowledge people when they walk through the door, give them that smile. Make sure that you're doing all those small little people skill things that really are common sense that sometimes people will say are not so common. I mean, how hard is that?
It's extremely difficult, because walk into most restaurants, and I'll speak in New York City, when you don't get that.
Yeah, it's noticeable.
When you're not being acknowledged, when the person at the door is looking down at their book or at their phone, looking up at you, taking your name and walking you to a table. There's no greeting. There's nothing special about the experience. And I think, sadly, people have become to accept this even more and more. Look, I was a maitre d' for 30 plus years.
But I wanted you to get into your background, so this is perfect.
Okay, it's a position that sort of went the way of the dodo bird when maitre d's couldn't be part of the tip pool and had to be paid, a 6-figure salary from the house, and they wouldn't do that. So they began to put host at the front of the door. And these are generally inexperienced restaurant people who are working for minimum wage, who looked very good, and all they knew to do was walk a person to a table. The maitre d' should be the most learned, experienced person in the dining room that understands what's going on. And when you take that out of the equation, you're kind of left floundering with the people that are greeting someone at the door. And so it's in paramount importance to get someone that understands what the restaurant is in its entirety, which you don't get with just hiring a basic host to run the door. And nothing against hosts at all. These are basically kids that don't really know the industry, but they stopped paying someone to do that. It's coming back now. You're seeing more and more maitre d's, but that person at the door has to understand this. And then also, we work on this every day. It's all about the details. Everything we do in this restaurant, or restaurants I've worked in, I've been some very good ones, is about the details. Is the lighting right? Is the music too loud? Is the door staffed? Is someone actually standing there so you're greeted when they walk in? Is the bartender not turned around on his phone and not really paying attention to you, or talking to his one guest at the other end of the bar, and leave you sitting there for 3 or 4 minutes, which can seem like an eternity, before acknowledging you?
Right.
We work on this, and if if we get a complaint or if a manager sees we didn't do this right, we talk about it every day in our pre-shift meeting. And the tablecloths have to be exactly the right levels. Little details like this encompass the whole, and that's what creates the experience. And when your staff understands that, and a waiter will come to me and say, oh, Michael, the table, look at the table on table 11, it's off. You then get that server. Why is that off? Let's fix it. It's a team mentality that understands the experience and actually loves people.
Yeah, that's an important, that
You
will
have to.
show through very quickly if you're jaded, curmudgeonous, and you're just trying to fake it. It
Yeah,
doesn't
no,
work long
and
term.
as you said earlier, you look, we all have horrible days. Everybody does, but you got to put that aside. This is a theater. You know, you walk in, we've got a script, we've got a set. No matter, you know, you go to Broadway, those actors who are crushing it, they might have had a breakup that day or someone died in the family. You got to put that aside and you have to get out there and do it. And we really talk about that. And the people that we have here, I'm very lucky. And in most churches I've worked in, got it. They understood it. This is what they did because they actually loved the job.
Yeah. Now you bring up Broadway and you bring up theater, and I know that's a part of your background. I quote dead people. Do you ever see the movie The Sixth Sense? I see dead people. I quote dead people. And I'm going to quote Richard Burton, famous actor, TV, radio, movies, and stage. And he won the Tony Award or some version of that award for his Shakespeare play. And this is what he used to say that ties into exactly what you're talking about. Is I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, but he would basically say, tonight, as he walked out on stage, he'd say to the person pulling the curtain, tonight, I want to be so good that I cheat the audience that was here last night. Now, that's the kind of effort he put forth every night. If every day, every evening, our employees, regardless of the kind of business we're in, would come to work with the attitude of better today than yesterday, every day. And it may or may not work. I mean, he may give it the performance of his life 3 years ago and he's trying to match it again, but he's trying every single day. And that's what I think the best people do. And that's what you're talking about. I want to do the Broadway thing because that's really where your restaurant career started serendipitously when you were working for, I can't remember, somebody in the entertainment theater world. And they said, hey, I got a job for you. And it was at a restaurant.
Well, I was working at Playwrights Horizons, my first job in New York City after graduating school, and they paid me zero. They had no money to pay me. It was the beginning of the off-Broadway movement and was one of the #1 theaters at that point in the country, but they had no money to pay me. And I was associate producing director. So the associate producing director knew the guy who ran the restaurant next door, and he knew he was going to lose me if I couldn't get some money to pay my rent. So he says, look, I need you to do me a favor. You got to hire Michael as a waiter. Which I gladly accepted. And from the first day, I put on an apron. I loved it. It was amazing. It was showtime. It was wonderful. And I've never really lost that feeling for the most part. You know, you wait tables enough, you get to the point where, oh my God, if I had a shitty audition today, I don't have a role, I got to do this again. I got to face these people. I got to wait tables. I don't want to do this. I'm an actor, blah, blah, blah. But you do it, you know, like Burton says, you do it because that's where you're making your money.
Yeah.
And these people are paying you. They're paying you to be served. They're paying you for your show is what they do, the experience. And so I just always, that was my mantra and I got to do it. But had they paid me in the theater, I probably would not have gotten a waiter job.
Yeah. Hey, I'm holding in my book, or in my hand, your book, Your Table is Ready, Tales of a New York City Maître D. This book is very, very entertaining. It also gives you insight into your life, which is extremely entertaining, but it's also filled in these pages with practical ideas to help anybody in any business that they want. Even though I don't think it was written with that intent, there was quite a bit of takeaway I had as a customer service experience guy. And the book really goes through your whole history and how it all started. It's fascinating. When we come back from our break, there's a part of the book that caught my attention that we're going to start off with. It's a question to tee it up. It has to do, well, I'll let everybody, it's the cliffhanger. You'll have to come back right after the break to figure it out.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. With Michael Cecchi-Azzolina, who is the author of Your Table is Ready and a phenomenal, award-winning, amazing restaurateur. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Shep Hyken here with an offer that won't cost you a cent. You may have heard me talk about my annual customer service and experience research. We've surveyed thousands of customers matching the U.S. Census for age, gender, ethnicity, and geography. and we find out what customers love, hate, and want in a customer experience. What's the number one customer experience that almost every customer desires? What makes them come back? What makes them leave? Why won't they fill out surveys? What do they think of AI? Well, these questions and more are answered in the research. You can download the full report by going to hyken.com and clicking on the research tab at the top. Like I said, it won't cost you a cent, but it may make you or save you thousands and thousands of dollars when you understand your customers' expectations. Again, the website is www.hyken.com.
You're listening to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken.
We are back on Amazing Business Radio. We're talking with Michael Cecchi-Azzolina. He is a restaurateur, Cecchi's Restaurant. Did I say that correct?
That's
yes.
it. Cecchi's. Yeah.
Cecchi's. Check it out. No pun intended. If you are in the New York area, phenomenal, award-winning. It's amazing. I want to start off our second half. I want to dive into the book a little bit. I'm reading this, and I'm very familiar with this name, and I see you in one of the chapters, probably maybe about a third of the way into the book, talk about this guy named Danny, and it turns out to be Danny Meyer, who you just mentioned, who wrote a book called Setting the Table, 10, 15 years ago. Well, here's what's cool. Casey, who works with you, who set this whole thing up, actually was there and met Danny Meyer. But it wasn't the first time I'd met Danny Meyer. And Danny Meyer, Union Square Hospitality, restaurateur, really, really successful. Shake Shack was one of his famous creations, if you will. Anyway, Danny and I met, are you ready for this? Nursery school. We were in nursery school together. Somehow he ended up in New York City, and I'm stuck here still in St. Louis. By the way, I love St. Louis, and so does he. He comes back and he visits quite often. But we were in nursery school together. We had the same teacher. We figured this out. And we go, how many people would have, and it wasn't until maybe 15, 20 years ago when we first reconnected again. And then, I see him every once in a while.
That's amazing.
It's
You're in New York?
Story. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, we went to nursery school, and he actually went to my school, high school, for a short time, and then switched to the enemy high school, which were the smarter kids, to be quite honest. I don't want to say that too loud because there's maybe the people from my school are listening. Anyway, here we go back. So there was a chapter in there about Danny. In the interview, there were 3 questions he asked. I can't remember the first one. The second one had the choice of mayonnaise or Hellman's or something like that. But the third question is the one that caught my eye, and that was, what's more important, the food, which is the product, or the service? I think we all probably know what the answer is. But I want to know from your perspective. I want to hear your commentary about that, because you knew the right answer.
That was one of the questions. And it was my first restaurant job that we just talked about. The restaurant closed for non-payment of taxes. And I was walking the streets. Back then, you walked the streets with a resume and walked into restaurants and handed them a resume. And so I walk into this fancy restaurant in Union Square area. And I thought, oh, I'm not qualified for this. And I handed my resume to the woman at the door, the host. And I was about to think, I'm not qualified here. I'm going to walk out the door. She says, oh, hold on a second. We're going to interview you. So I have an interview, and it turns out to be Danny Meyer, a young Danny Meyer, not the Danny Meyer who's the legend right now. And I know who he was. And one of the questions he asked me, what's more important, food or service? And I have no idea what I answered. Also, I didn't get the job, but that question stayed with me for years. And eventually I came to the point, and I worked with some very famous chefs, 3-star New York City chefs, and the food we served was spectacular, but it always came down to the service. It always did. The people who walk in the door, while they want to have a great meal, if you have a surly waiter, a maitre d' who's rude, a bartender who, as I just said, doesn't acknowledge you, if the steak comes out medium well and you wanted it medium rare and no one's on top of it and it's not taken care of, no matter how many stars that restaurant has, chances are you're not going back. And if you go back, I think there's a serious problem. It's always been for me about the hospitality. People want to be acknowledged. They want to be treated kindly. They want to engage you sometimes. They want to have a conversation. If they come back, and they will, they want to know that you remember them. And hospitality is number one. And most chefs I have worked with, in fact, not all of them, agree that's it. Look, you want to put a great steak on the table and a great piece of fish on the table. But if that's only part of the meal, the rest of the 65% is the front of the house dealing with the guest. And if that's not on point, they're not coming back. They're really not. You
Yeah.
might get one more shot at it, but not usually. Look, when I opened this restaurant, I knew we had one, and I'm known. I have a lot of customers that follow me for many years. I knew I had one shot because this is New York. There are 25,000 other restaurants. If they come in, if the service is not right, if the food's not on, you know what? They're not coming back. They're really not. Time is too valuable. The money's too valuable. So it's once you get them with the service, I guarantee you. And we had a rough start, food wise, kitchen wise. We had no staff in the kitchen. People came back, and they came back. I thought the food was so bad, but it wasn't where the level we are today.
Well, the food was probably adequate, but the experience took it to the next level.
100%.
And I'm 100% convinced that if you've got a product that just does what it's supposed to do, it doesn't necessarily have to be the best, and you surround it with an experience that your customers or guests love, they're going to come back because they want more of that experience. It's interesting what you were saying. There is something you mentioned, and I kind of think back to the whole idea of the technical side of service and the soft side, but let's stay with that soft side. You can deliver perfect service, meaning it was flawless. The food came out on time, but to have a hospitality mentality is more than just delivering the service well. And I'm not talking about the technical side of the forks, the knives going on the right place. And I'm talking about, okay, I took your order perfectly. I came and the food was perfect when I brought it out at the right time, but I didn't give you the warm feeling of hospitality.
Look, restaurants are an emotional experience. People come in, they come in because they're on a date, right? They're looking for someone, for a partner. That's from emotions. They're coming in to find a date. They're coming in to celebrate a birthday, an anniversary. This is all emotional things. They're coming in because they want a good meal, because they're hungry, right? There's a very physical manifestation. Look, what we do is primal. We feed people. People come in the door and we give them the basic need of life, which is food, right? That is a gift. It is such a gift. And if you look at that as a gift, that look, you're coming in, I'm going to feed you. I'm going to feed you, and I want you to be happy with what you do here. And the experience is good. You're touching primal emotions. And when you don't do that, when it's perfunctory, when it's technical, look, what's the joy in that?
Your book, or actually your restaurant, Cecchi's, is a love letter to New York. Okay. You don't use the word love unless there's emotion attached to it.
Yeah, no, people have written that, and they've said it to me many, many times. And the first time the woman said it to me, honestly, I welled up because I didn't think of it that way. But she was right. Look, I love the city. I spent my life here. I spent most of my life in the restaurant business. It's been so important to me. And I felt that restaurants in New York, when they've gone from single owners like me, people like me don't exist anymore in the city. There may be a dozen single individuals that own a restaurant. They're now all restaurant groups. I had people come in last night from a very famous large restaurant group in New York City. And I was walking, I'm in the room most of the time. And I was at the other table next to them cleaning off 3 glasses. And I have 3 dirty glasses in my hand. And this guy stops me. He says, "Are you the owner?" I says, "Yes." He says, "This is remarkable. I'm in the restaurant business for 30 years. I work for this huge restaurant group. No one, wherever I go now, does this. The owner's here. He's clearing glasses off a table. He's talking to us. And the reason why we're having this, they're a walk-in that I got them a table. The reason why it's so spectacular because you're here. The people here understand that you're here. People know it. It's a sense of kind of family, though we're not a family, but we give that vibe there. But it's personal. We all do what it takes to make people happy. This guy recognized it. They will come back now 100 times. I will have them for life because of simple gestures that we do. A hello, a thank you, a smile, welcome back. My bartender remembers everyone's drink the second time they come in the door. This is emotional. It's you're touching people. It's touching people. It's so important. It's technical, perfunctory service. Some people might like that. Don't leave me alone, give me my food. And there are places you can get that. But I think the majority of New Yorkers, the reason I call this a love letter to New York is because what old New York, or what I knew growing up from the bars and grills I went to as a kid, you knew the people. You didn't know the chef. You knew the name of the front of house person, maybe, but it was from the heart, you
You
know?
know, oftentimes the owner of a restaurant, a single restaurant, is the chef. And
Yes.
the chef
Yes.
is in the back. I was down in Florida. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I remember meeting this guy. He's the chef. He comes out and we started talking, and he sat down with me. I go, "Who's cooking the food?" They go, they know how to cook the food. I just kind of oversee. They know what they're doing. My job as the chef is to make sure the kitchen is run well, but more importantly is that what's in the front of the house is flawless and perfect, and I create the relationship. People feel they're connected because
Bingo.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Bingo. Absolutely. Let the technicians be in the kitchen. Don't let the technicians be on the floor. You want that guy that could cook that steak medium rare every single time, that
Yep.
the piece of fish is not overcooked, that your fries are hot and crispy. Yeah, no, that's technique, right? The front of house is more experiential.
Yep. Love it. We're going to wrap up. I always ask a final question, and it's usually like one last thing you want to share with us. But I have a specific question because I was fortunate enough to get a few questions that you might answer. And this is, I think it's the perfect wrap up for today. The one thing question, I want it to be about what's a service philosophy or golden rule that you swear by that every industry that has customer service should adopt.
Be kind.
That's it.
Be
Is that
kind.
the secret to life?
Yeah, yes, be kind. Just be nice. If you start with that, you're in a winning position.
I love that. And
It's
every
very, it's
year,
the, it's so simple. It is so simple to be nice to someone. And that's it. What more do you want?
so every year I do customer service research, a big research project. I want to go all the way back to long before I even got into this business in the 1980s. I might have been in it by then, but the number one reason that people would leave a business, approximately 71% of the time, and this is a study that was commissioned by the White House Office of Consumer Affairs. The number one reason was rudeness or apathy, the exact opposite of the word you just used. Be kind, kindness, or being nice. Ironically, every year we do the research, we ask, what are the top 3 words that you think of when you think of great customer service? You know what the number one is? Nice, kindness. We group them together conceptually, but that's what it is. It's not hard. It's not rocket science.
And acknowledgement. You have to acknowledge your staff. You have to acknowledge your customers. If you don't, look, I walk in the kitchen every day. The first thing I do is I give a fist bump to all my cooks. First thing, hi guys, how are you? I do it with my servers. How are you? Hello. Look, I'm not the greatest restaurateur in the world, but I'm a human being. And when I see someone walks in the door, I want them to say hi to me. I'm going to say hi to them. I make sure I do it to everybody in this restaurant, and they all do it to each other. Hi, how are you? It's so simple.
It
It's
is,
just so simple. Be nice to each other
yeah, I love
and
it. Love it.
acknowledge we're a team and we're going into battle every night together. And we got to acknowledge each other.
Well, we call this amazing business radio because of amazing interviews just like this. But in order to be amazing, let me just bring it down to a simple word that you use. Kindness. Be kind. Kind will elevate the level of experience to possibly people saying, I love going there. I love doing business. I love going to that restaurant. I love whatever it is that anybody listening does. Why? They're kind. Kindness is amazing.
If you have time, I could end with one little story. It's just very quick.
Absolutely. Let's
I
do
have,
it.
I
Let's
have,
go
I
crazy.
tell
It's
you-
my show. I can do whatever I want.
Okay, I had 6 women at one table, and they've been in just separately together. They must have been in the restaurant 12 times. And I jokingly went to the table. I says, "Thank God, there's no other restaurants in New York City." And one of the women at the table looked at me and says, "Michael, there's no restaurant in New York City that treats us the way you do here."
Wow.
And that just summed it all up.
And
And
that's why you do what you do and you love what you do.
I love it. I do it to meet people like you, the guests that I've known for 30 plus years that I'm feeding their kids, their grandkids, sadly to say.
I love it. I love it. Well, I look forward to visiting you when I'm up in New York next. I promise I'm going to come by.
I'd love to have you.
All right. This is why we call it Amazing Business Radio. Michael, thanks so much for being on the show. Again, the book is Your Table is Ready, Tales of a New York City Maître D. I got to warn you, R-rated for language. There's some pretty good language in here that you just know going into it. You're going to see the F-bomb. And by the way, I use the F-bomb. I say it's fine. How is everything? Fine. Fine is not fine. Fine at best is average. That's the F-bomb of customer experience. But there's different F-bombs throughout the book. But it is a great, extremely entertaining read. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thanks, Shep. This is very enjoyable. Thank you.
All right, everybody, that wraps it up. Another episode of Amazing Business Radio. We will be back next week with another interview. Until that time, this is Shep Hyken reminding you to always be amazing.